Hello and welcome to the Week 8 version of the Survivor vid. It's Matt Brown, it's Steven Andrus. You can find us over on the Twitter machine at MattBrownM2, at StevenAndrus1. And if you are watching this video, tip of the old cap to you. My goodness, you are a stud. Or a studette, or I don't even know how. Everyone can be a stud, right, Steven?
It's a gender neutral term.
Yes, everybody can be a stud. And man, seriously, I am out of my pools. It is just a absolutely brutal NFL season for this type of contest. So if you are still around, hat tip to you. And Steven, you have, the big one, of course, takes place in Las Vegas. It's the $1,000 buy-in, $6 million to first place, and not a lot of people left in that one either.
No, at this point last year, it's circa 48% were still alive through 7 weeks. This year, 2%. 125 remaining entries out of 6133. And they're not alone because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers eliminated a lot of people last week across all the different pools. Roughly 30% were eliminated from those left at DraftKings, about the same in the ESPN Eliminator Challenge. So we got that right last week, Matt, but I lost my final bullet because I went with the Patriots and I am DEA dead.
They cleaned up the rest of the people that didn't play the Bucs, that is for sure. And listen, our second choice last week did scrape through with the Dolphins, and so hopefully if you did avoid the Patriots, you played the Dolphins, and you're still watching this video here. If we look at the big favorites this week, guys, not a lot of them. We got the Cowboys that are 9-point favorites against the Chicago Bears. That is a game at home for the Cowboys with Dak Prescott back under center. You have the Philadelphia Eagles that are 10.5-point favorites over the Pittsburgh Steelers. That also a home game for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then if you go down a little bit further on the board, we do have the Sunday night game in which the Bills are 11-point home favorites over the Packers. So, Steven, we have three big home favorites this week that is very likely, considering how ridiculously tough this season has gone, are very likely to soak up nearly all of the entries this week, because when we really think about it, your pool is probably whittled down to almost nothing at this point, unless you were in the sharpest pool that's ever played Survivor in the history of Survivor. So it is going to be very hard, Steven, for us moving forward to make any sort of recommendations on any, air quote, cute plays, because playing the chalk is most likely the way to go at this point for most people.
I agree with you. I mean, there's barely anybody left. We're getting very close to the end game at this point. So if you've been saving your bullets and having great teams, then I don't have any reason to tell you not to use them at this point. Now, with that being said, we still want to be cognizant of the most popular picks each week for game theory purposes. Try and maximize the amount of chances we have to be the last team standing. And if we're picking the same team as everybody else, that's going to go against that. So just for what it's worth, looking at the ESPN pool of remaining entries, the Denver Broncos are 26% picked right now on that neutral field game against the Jaguars. The Cowboys are 19% picked against the Chicago Bears. And I believe those are the two most popular teams. So despite the Eagles being double-digit favorites against the Steelers, despite the Buffalo Bills being big favorites against the Green Bay Packers, single-digit percentage at this point for those two teams.
My guess is the Cowboys go off as the favorite choice this week amongst all pools, because if you take a look at this, again, if you are playing at least minimal strategy, we do have the three big favorites, and there is more future value in Philadelphia and Buffalo than there is in Dallas, strictly because they're just better teams. And so my guess is it's the Cowboys go off as the number one team this week. And honestly, that would be my play if I were still available, if I were still in. Here's the thing, Steven. Chicago has certainly looked better over the last few weeks. I think that this team actually has a pulse. And guess what? Maybe Eberflus is actually a decent coach, right? I mean, they come off of that. They come into that game against the Patriots this past week on Monday Night Football, had an excellent game plan, a bunch of designed runs for Justin Fields, putting their quarterback in a position to succeed and not have him just drop back over and over again, as you and I have mentioned on our preview podcast, where he's just holding onto the ball too long and taking a bunch of bad sacks. I thought the game plan was fantastic by Chicago. That being said, it is a different animal this week with the Dallas defense that I believe is going to be able to neutralize at least some of that from Chicago's side. But again, the pickings are slim this week if we want a big favorite, because outside of that, we start getting into just kind of 4-point favorites, right? I mean, like and we know what a 4-point favorite's worth in 2022 NFL, just about nothing. So, it seems like it's Cowboys to me in a fairly obvious position, but, fairly obvious positions have lost a lot this year.
For sure. I can't knock anybody that wants to take the Cowboys. I do get a little concerned when I'm backing a team that's always near the league lead in penalties. They are conservative by nature with their head coach, despite bragging that he spent a year studying analytics and then admitting he lied about it in the intro press conference. Still my favorite press conference moment in NFL history, where he literally is sitting next to the owner and said he lied during his job interview, and still is the head coach of the Cowboys. But I digress. I think the team that I am probably most worried about among these teams that have larger than 75% implied win probability, if you convert their money line odds, that would be the Bills, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. The team I would be least likely to pick there is the Eagles, because we have seen that they've kind of, for whatever reason, pumped the brakes in the second half. They haven't been quite as sharp in the second half of these games. And I know Kenny Pickett is a rookie and he's had issues in turning the ball over. They still had a chance to win that game against Miami last week. And the defense, even without Watt, has been pretty decent. So I think they're just spunky enough where I think in all likelihood the Eagles dominate them. I don't think the Eagles are a good team, but this is now back-to-back weeks where the Eagles upset the Bucs, and they had a drive to take the lead late in the game against the Miami Dolphins. So I think that's of those three, that's the team I want to kind of stay away from.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And mainly for me, it would be last on the pecking order because they just have such a juicy remaining schedule. So again, it's like if you're in a pool of even 50 plus people at this point, I think you want to hold on to Philadelphia and Buffalo, because most likely there's going to be people in your pool that haven't. Listen, games with Philadelphia still has Houston, Washington, Indianapolis over the next 3 weeks after Pittsburgh. Then you get a game against Tennessee in week 13, which again, Tennessee is one of the most fake winning teams going out there. And then a week 15 game against Chicago, which, listen, it should be over by then, but like all these contests should be over by week 15. But if you want to look that far in advance, you do have a game against Chicago in week 15 as well. So I think there's just so much future value for Philadelphia. And then if we look, of course, Buffalo, outside of this week, Jets in week 9, you get Cleveland in week 11, which is right before Deshaun Watson comes back. So you don't have to worry about that. And then, of course, you get the Jets again in week 14 and Chicago in week 16 if you want to hold on to Buffalo. So, Steven, let's just say there are people watching this right now, and they've already used Dallas, and they've already used Philadelphia, they've already used Buffalo, and they're going to have to roll the dice on one of these shorter favorites this week. I'm not going to lie. I think I would play Tennessee against Houston, and I hate this Tennessee team. But I think Houston has really shown that they are very content with being a bottom 3 team in the NFL and getting one of those top picks. And, look, it's only Wednesday when we're recording this. We know that the phones have been ringing about Brandon Cooks for them and all of this. And so they might even have another player or two out of town by the time this thing kicks off. So for me, I think I'd have to play Tennessee, as much as I don't even like that Tennessee team.
I disagree with you. I see what you're saying. And listen, in this context, when we're trying to pick outside the top 3, there's not a lot of good choices. There's some really tough choices to make if you don't have one of these top 3 choices this week. But with Ryan Tannehill being banged up, not 100%, it looks like, even if he does play this week. On top of that, this Tennessee offense has not inspired confidence whatsoever. They are 31st in the league in yards per play at 4.9. In the last 3 games, 4.3 yards per game. Last year, league average was 5.5. This year, league average is about 5.4. So this offense has been covered up, they still win games. It's their defense that's keeping them in these games. I'd be very concerned, even if it is the Houston Texans. I think at this point, I still, despite them getting shellacked by Cincinnati last week, coming back at home, the Atlanta Falcons, minus 200, minus 227, anywhere in that range on the money line. That would still be my choice against the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers defense is pretty solid. We've seen that for a couple of years now. It's their offense that's terrible. The Falcons don't have a good defense, but they're not facing a good offense.
Yeah,
And
but dude, their secondary is so banged up. Like their secondary is going to be a shell. There was already a bad defense, and they're likely to be without 2 of their 3 starting corners, a starting safety, and they might be without all 3 starting corners if the injury report goes against them this week. So, I mean, I think that is actually I think Carolina's live to win that thing outright. Like, I think that is a fairly scary game considering it was a bad defense to begin with. And their secondary their whole damn secondary might be out of the game.
I don't disagree with you, but we're looking at a list of options here. Falcons versus Panthers, Colts versus Washington with Sam Ehlinger, Vikings against the Cardinals, whose offense looked a lot better with DeAndre Hopkins, Jaguars against Denver on a neutral field, and the Jags can't seem to get it together. And then you mentioned the Titans. The only other one here that our senior writer Mo Nawara has in a Survivor column is the Seahawks at home against the Giants, and we know that's basically a coin flip game. That's a contrarian play.
Yeah, so, for me, it'd be Tennessee, and if I had to go second, my second pick would actually be the Dolphins against the Lions. The Lions.
You know what? That might be my first choice of this group, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lions have proven it was a feel-good story. Hard Knocks was great. You and I, we laughed about it on the podcast, and Dan Campbell seems like a super likable guy. That doesn't mean he's a good football coach, and that doesn't mean he's assembled a good football coaching staff around this team. And I think that has come to fruition, and we've seen that play out so far with this Lions squad. And so for me, I'm sitting here looking, and I'm like, okay, unless Miami just completely lays an egg, they're going to be able to score on this defense. And what we've seen from Jared Goff the last couple of games as well, Steven, he's kind of turned back into Goff, right? Like he had a fine couple of weeks in weeks 1 and 2, and then now he's back to being Jared Goff again. And so you're not going to love it. Like, you're not going to love pushing the button. It's a short favorite, and Detroit at least is in the back of your mind of having this offense that we saw in weeks 1 and 2 and all that. But again, if you have to get outside of Dallas, Philly, and Buffalo, I think Miami is a fairly interesting option.
I agree with you. Now that we kind of look at it and you bring them up outside the top 3, I think that's my top choice.
Yeah. Again, guys, listen, I would highly recommend don't get cute anymore. Like, if you have Dallas or Philly or Buffalo still available, specifically Dallas, that would be the play, and that would be the obvious play and the easy play. And, I understand we've had these big favorites get knocked off each and every single week, but we have to play them. We have to go with what is, most likely to come and most likely to happen. And as Steven mentioned, I mean, these teams with the big, implied win probability, there's only 3 of them, and Philly and Buffalo provide you a ton of value if you get past this week to probably win your contest, right? If you still have Philly and Buffalo in your back pocket after this week, you're probably in a really good position to win the whole damn contest that you're in. So, Dallas for me. If you don't have Dallas, then you have to take one of the Philly and Buffalo. And if for whatever reason you burn through all those 3, my choices would be between Miami and Tennessee. Steven likes Atlanta and Miami. Outside of that, I think you got to play one of those teams. I mean, listen, I think, if you listen to we have a podcast that's going to be, that got posted about power rankings. I think Cincinnati's on the up and up. I think that they are looking like one of the better teams in the NFL. But, given all these choices this week, and it is being that Browns team that is kind of plucky on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to take a pass. And Indy, as you mentioned, Steven, starting Ehlinger, stepping in for the first time in a while, I can't back Sam Ehlinger. I don't care if it is Washington or not.
For sure. Can't do it. My top choice would probably be Buffalo this week. And that's if you have Philadelphia still to save for down the road, and Kansas City as well. If you haven't used Kansas City, they're looking like they're rounding in a form here, and they have some pretty solid matchups coming up here where you could use them. And if these projections hold from what I'm seeing, you're getting Buffalo at less than 5% pick this week, despite being a double-digit favorite. Maybe people are scared off by the logo that they're playing as opposed to the actual talent on the Green Bay Packers, but that's a great leverage spot to have the best team in the league at less than 5% picked if that holds up. So that'd be my top choice. After that, I am with you with the Cowboys. I think we're past the point where we need to completely toss teams based on game theory. Maybe just consider it a little bit. And then I don't want to use the Eagles. I want to save them. I think there's, Pittsburgh's at least spunky enough where I don't want to consider using them this week. After that, it would be the Dolphins for me.
Guys, if you are still available, like we said, awesome on you. We have a written article over on thelines.com if you want to get some written version of kind of this podcast. So be sure and head over there. If you want to get in the NFL discussion in Discord, listen, you can get some good opinions on that as well. So join the Discord channel. There's a link in the description if you're watching us on the YouTube page, or if you're on thelines.com, upper right-hand corner up there, you can click the little Discord. You can click the little Discord logo and you'll be able to sign up and get it, listen, some other insight is outside of just me and Steven here, because we know it's been tough. It's been tough on everybody so far this season. Guys, everything we do, absolutely free. So please hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comment section if you're still available, who you playing this week. What's the play? What team you fading? Who's the big favorite that's going to lose outright this week? Let us know as well. Good luck on your survivor pick here in week 8.